Hello there, this is Rank Carcass again. I'm going to do a video here on modifying the base set of pieces that you get from Axis and Allies 1940, the global game, so both Europe and Pacific, and how to make that work for this game here, Global War 1936 by Historical Board Gaming. This is just something I came up with when we bought the game because there's so many different unit types and tech, and there's a few extra things like they added extra planes that didn't exist before, like the medium bomber, for example, or we also kind of did some of this stuff in the older game there, the Axis and Allies 1940 global game with jet fighters and whatnot, but we find them to be more prevalently used in this game. So I'm just gonna pan over here. Oh, there we go. So this is my whiteboard that I usually have on the wall. I use this as a legend. Now, I've picked up multiple colors of these chips, and they're available at Historical Board Gaming for just under $3 for a pack of 50. I was also in need of a pack right now, so I went to a local store and they sell these 7/8 chips. They labeled them as mini poker chips, and we needed a set to get our game going because we wanted to add something. We wanted to add a unit in, and we just picked up these. Now for our games here, we're using, let's move this back a little bit here. For our games there, we're using basically these card deck protectors. It's got a lid, and some of you may recognize this. This is I believe this is Young Grasshopper's original Global 40 deck. Right, so a basic card protector box. You can buy these in most game stores, and the reason we use these is that way you can just do this, and now we got one batch on that side of the map and one batch on the other side of the map, so to speak, right? So that way you always got pieces in reach. And if you want to clean it up, ready to transport, there you go. Good enough. Now, when I took these to, or when I bought these things, I went to the game store and I took in these original gray pieces, which are from the Global 40 game. And then I asked if I could open up a package and see if they lock. And they do interlock, so good enough. Ones from Historical Board Gaming also interlock, so you can make yourself a stack. The nice thing about that is, since I'm using these as counters, these are my 1s, my 3s, my 5s, and my 10s. I can say use the gray as a marker, and then I can just say, okay, we've got 4, 9, add another 10. There we go. We got 19. Of course, sliding away from me on the whiteboard. We got 19 of something right there. Bang, done. So when I'm using these colored chips as identifiers, like these are what I'm currently using them as. Damage, a country special. I'm using the grays as lights, yellows as heavies, blues as marines, purples as airborne, and the brown as mountain. So here's a quick example here of the tanks. So you got your standard out-of-box tanks on all three of these here, and I just picked one color for, or one nation for each of the alliances here. So you have your regular medium tank, right? Well, if you want to make it light, put it on a gray chip. You want to make it heavy, put it on the yellow chip. You want to make that Tiger 1E that you can only build one of and is better than the regular one, take the yellow to make it heavy, and then throw your country special on top. Or if you want, just use a country special, right? I find some people find it confusing if you don't have both, because then they don't realize it's a heavy tank. That's a country special. And now here, I'm just going to show these things here in comparison for you. And you'll see that with the size and sculpt shape, they're quite unique and they're easy to identify on the board. So I bought these light tank sculpts in these colors from Historical Board Gaming. Obviously different from these ones. And then these heavy tank sculpts I also picked up from Historical Board Gaming. They are quite obviously not the same. And then I still needed a marker for my country special, so I just put the Tiger 1 on the black chip, and there we go, it's a Tiger 1E. So now you know the difference. Rather simple way of doing it. Here I also have this section here. This is artillery. You've got your regular artillery, and then using the yellow chips you've got heavy artillery. And Russia's got special artillery, the Katyushka, that has is very similar to the German Tiger 1E, only it's Russian rocket artillery. I bought this sculpt here. I really like it. It really is quite obviously not the same as the rest of the artillery. And for some of these here, I was not sure if I wanted to go with these sculpts or not, so I have here, I believe that's the Priest and the Hummel for the Germans and the Allies here. I just picked it up in white, that way I could paint it whatever color I wanted to match my armies. Yeah, so that's that. There's no light artillery, so I didn't worry about that. Now for the mechanized. Same thing here. These are all just out-of-box sculpts. And they're all identical sculpts across the board here. So you have your regular mech. You have your advanced mechanized if you get the technology. And these are the Panzer Grenadiers, the special mechs that the Germans can get. Again, right, I just used the black for a country special. Pick the color you want, it doesn't matter. And for these lights here, I'm using the gray chip again, right? So these are light mechs, which I actually have used as cavalry pieces. I've replaced them with these cavalry pieces. And Historical Board Gaming didn't make any cavalry pieces when I did this about a year ago. So I went to a garage sale and happened to find this version of Risk. And inside they had these pieces in these 6 colors. These very tiny men I'm using as militia. Although I might use them as something different, since they now have sculpts available at Historical Board Gaming. And these are the colors that came out of box for this Risk game. And I just used those, I just painted them up to match my armies. And there's plenty in there. And then this artillery piece with the flag there, I couldn't think of a reason to use that. I could use it as a heavy artillery, but it's pretty beefy. I'm not sure. It doesn't really match the era of all this other stuff, but I'm not sure. I think I can probably buy a sculpt that's nicer. But that game I picked up for under $5 at a garage sale. And there was enough there. I don't know if you can see that, but this was the dark gray, this was the blue, and this was the dark green. But I just painted them up to match. And I have enough for all the nations, including the miners, to have a bunch of units. Now, fighters. You got your standard out-of-box fighters, and then I put them on a yellow chip here. Now you have jet aircraft, or jet fighters. In the past, I've upgraded to these sculpts here from Historical Board Gaming. The German and American fighters came in this color. I couldn't find any fighters for the Russians, so I just bought a couple extra packages of these Japanese fighters here, or jet fighters, and I just painted them up to match the out-of-box Russian color. And these fighters over here, these are the red Japanese from the original Pacific game. It's what I use for Japan on my boards. I actually had this game and I didn't have global, so I needed a Japanese, and this is the color I started with, and we've been sticking with it. So the reason I've got these black chips underneath my country special chips is to show that this is a veteran fighter, and this one here has the yellow chip underneath, so it's your jet fighter that's a veteran. And now that I have the jet fighter sculpt, I can just do that. So I can eliminate that one up there. I can go with these two instead. You know, you gotta identify that it's different, and if you're not sure how to do that, there you go. And the nice thing about all these sculpts is you just take your counters, right? These identifiers, we don't use them as counting as a troop. It's just on there as a color code. And there you go. It's kind of insane, but 19 veteran jet fighters. But there you go. It works. All right, now on to the bombers. This game has 3 different types of bombers that can do damage. And let me get this cat off my table. Come on, bud. There we go. He's only kind of knocking my stuff around, so here we go. Caught him before he messed up my whole setup. So, bombers. You have your standard out-of-box bombers or a strategic bomber. Here, let's just show these 3 rows up there here. These are what I use now, but standard out-of-box bombers for all 3 rows here. And I put a gray chip underneath. That would be a medium bomber. So a downgrade from a strategic, right? Anything older, smaller, less powerful, I put on the gray chips. Now, these ones here are on the yellow chips. That's what I'm using to signify that they are heavy or advanced. So these would be your heavy strategic bombers that are unlocked with technology in the game. So this is just using the standard out-of-box setup, right? So what I'm using now is I modified all my armies so that everything that's a twin engine for a bomber is now my medium bombers. I bought these sculpts from Historical Board Gaming so that they were my standard strategic bombers. And then I'm using them as my heavy strategic as well with that colored chip. Now the reason I did this is, yeah, as you can see, I painted the American one here in the Russian color as well. Some things were just cheaper for me to pick up in a pack of, say, 50 white ones and just paint it for everybody. Occasionally there's a bulk buy discount, and I was taking advantage of that as often as I could because it takes a bit of money to add each one of these units in. So we just did them one at a time, figured, okay, we're using the medium bombers all the time, let's buy those. We use the light tanks all the time, let's buy those. And you just keep going from there, right? I mean, if you're going to use it, buy it. If you're not, then why buy it? Just use these chips and test it out. Now with the infantry, there are a whole bunch of weird classes of infantry in here. If you're comparing it to the Axis and Allies 1940 Global or the other older variations of that franchise. So I'm going to go from left to right here and just show you some basic stuff. So this is your standard out-of-box infantry, which is the same sculpt on everything here, except for these little wrist dudes that I painted up to be my militia. So using the same color code. Standard, that's a Russian Guards infantry. These orange chips I was using as motorized, but when I bought these sculpts, which are just little trucks, also available at Historical Board Gaming. Yeah, if something's out of stock when I'm ordering it, I decide to put it on the map for everybody all at once. So if I don't find something that's out of stock, I'll just buy it in white and paint it whatever color I want. Alright, here we have my Marines. So I'm just using blue underneath, and then when you have your advanced Marines or your special Marines, I know the Americans and the Japanese both have elite Marines. We just show that by putting the yellow chips saying that they're advanced. That way you can differentiate them from the other standard Marine, right? Airborne, we're using purple at the moment, and all that is a purple chip saying that this infantry is different from that one because with the color it's an airborne. Now I have brown here for mountains, and I also have the out-of-box gray here I was using for militia, but now I've picked up these guys from that Risk game, as I said, and I'm using those. And they are quite obviously different in size, and since most often militia can't move, these are quite helpful. Now you're going to find with militia there's the odd, like all units, there's going to be the odd person who's got something special. So these are my militia chip for gray with the black chip on top saying it's a country special, so that you know that this is that Volkssturm German militia that may move inside of German territory. And then now you just use the black chip and this little militia sculpt we are using. This same guy right here. You know, pretty simple. The biggest thing you're gonna need is you're gonna need to make yourself a legend, and you will find as you're setting up a game that you're gonna end up changing your legend a few times. But it doesn't really matter, as long as everybody at your games can figure it out. That's all that matters. So here, same thing. You got your standard out-of-box carriers, your standard fleet carriers. And then I wanted to have escort carriers, but I didn't have any of these fancy sculpts at the time. We weren't sure, are we going to use them? What's going on? So we were using these at first, and same thing, it's just a low-tech or minor version of the same thing, right? Using the gray. And that was just to show that it was a light carrier that could only take one hit and could only take one plane instead of these that had 2 hits and 2 planes. Eventually we ended up picking up these. Again, the Russians don't have any naval pieces in the out-of-box color I could find. So I just painted this guy up. This is the Allies Casablanca carrier, and we just painted that in a color that matched the Russians. So there you are. And here's a quick example of those same two in action. You have your regular carrier, and then you have your light carrier with only the one plane on it. Honestly, we now use this. It's quite a bit different. You can definitely tell just from a glance across the room without having to use the chips. Okay, here. Let's go into cruisers. Now, Historical Board Gaming's got a bunch of different unit types out there. They sold a bunch of sets, and they came out with rule sets for their units and whatnot. And we were toying with the idea of maybe picking up an expansion or two that involved these, but we weren't sure. So we did the same thing. You got your 3 out-of-box cruisers. And then we went with light cruisers here with the gray chip, and then a heavy or a battle cruiser we just put on the yellow. They all have different costs. They all have different attack and defense values, so this worked out perfect for us. And since we're using the yellow and gray for everything else, it just seemed like a no-brainer, and it's been no problems. Now let's move on to the destroyers here. I have your standard out-of-box destroyers right here. I actually have a Russian here from the original Europe, so it's identical sculpt to the Americans. But same thing, right? Torpedo boat destroyer, put a yellow on it. Now, there's not any rules for heavy destroyers that I've seen, except for there's one for the Germans in this War Plan Z. But if you have a house rule or something you wanted to try out, or you got your own system, there you go. This works perfectly. All right. Now on to the submarines. Submarines, same deal. Your standard out-of-box sculpts for all of these. Regular sub, coastal sub on the gray, and your advanced sub on the yellow. Pretty simple. Okay, now here with the battleships, there's no light battleships. That would be like a heavy cruiser, right? So for the battleships, you've basically just got your regular battleship, and then you've got a heavy battleship. Not everybody's got one of these sculpts, but you know, you may be like some people. Like there's some people in my games that went, hey, why does the Japanese and the Americans have a heavy battleship? Everybody should have the option. So we occasionally house rule that in, and that's why you'll end up doing this. Now, I have a couple of different variations of the game. As you'll notice, I have Europe, the original Europe, and the 1940 Europe sculpts for the battleships in Germany, and they are the same size, or they are not the same size. And same thing with these Russians, the Europe, and then the larger one in the back is from the 1940 version. So that's just a relatively simple solution if you don't want to use the chips. We don't typically build too many of these with Russia, but you never know. Okay, now there's a few things that you're going to want for markers. Like you could say, hey, this sub's on convoy duty, right? Well, you can just put it there and say it, but I guarantee you, with all the other moves you're doing, you're going to forget. So we like using these. This battleship's damaged, turn it on its side, or put it on one of these. Now we got a destroyer on escort duty in this sea zone. Put it on one of those. And you are going to be building a facility right here, so put it on one over there, right? Now those sculpts are from historical board gaming, or these chips. Really like them. They're really simple and basic. But sometimes, you know, you're not sure what to do. You're not sure how many you want. You're not sure if you even need those things. So here, I'm just going to grab something. These are what we're using for 10s now, but in the past we used them for weird markers like this. So to do the same thing, I guess it should be somebody else. Hey, you can't convoy your own line. So you got Germans for some reason in the Pacific. There, Germans on convoy. We're using these orange ones as damaged. So damaged battleship. Escort duty, same color as the convoy, that way you couldn't screw it up, right? So that was an option. Or, you know what, I only want to buy one pack of 50 of these because I'm not sure. Use the same freaking one. There you go. If it's orange, it's damaged. These ones can't be damaged, so they're on escorts. These ones can't be damaged, so they're on convoy. And now you're saying, I'm building a factory right here. Well, who's going to know that? You're building it there. So use a chip. As long as it's not the same one you use for damage, because that'll be confusing. Just put your chip piece down. and say, I'm building a Navy base right here. So that one's under construction. And there you go, right? Simple. So that's these chips here are one quick, simple, relatively cheap way of doing this. To buy all the sculpts for one of these shapes here, I was looking at about the same price as a whole pack of 50 of these for just 5 of the same sculpts, right? In historical board gaming. So if you want to do your light tanks, and just your light tanks, that's about the same amount of money as to do the chips, which I found was enough to do my tanks, my mechs, my strategic bombers, my cruisers, subs, carriers, all my infantry, anything that you wanted to do that was upgraded or downgraded versions of the same thing. So those are one solution. Now, everybody's probably got a bunch of these if you have more than one version of the game. These are both from older games. I'm not sure which ones. I just put little stickers on the back. And guess what? It works exactly the same way. So this yellow, make yellow whatever, mean whatever you want. And this is a medium tank or a heavy tank. And that's the opposite. Very simple. And for cost effectiveness, this one's way higher up there. But I found that they don't interlock. Right? It's just the roundel upside down on top. So we had some occasional confusion when we tried this out. But it does work. And you can buy these in packages of 480 3/4 inch stickers. The same kind of thing people use to sell stuff in a garage sale or whatever. And these I bought in yellow and red for different reasons. I was actually putting them on the back here so that I could put one of these down and upside down in the territory and say there's a battle there, or this one's changing hands, maybe, right? So we wouldn't miss the battle. And we wouldn't miss adding up the income differences at the end of the turn. But these things also get sold in multiple different colors. You can buy them in variety packs. So if you bought 2 different variety packs of colors and you slapped them all on the back of a bunch of roundels or whatever you happen to have lying around that's 3/4 of an inch round, you can replace all of these colors here I have, right? It's a pack of 4. Another pack of 4. Now you have an extra color. You know what I mean? So, cheap option. Personally, I'm slowly finding out what works, what we use, and we're changing it to the sculpts. Because with these tanks here, for example, I really like how you can pick these out across the map. You can tell right away that that's a light tank. Right? You can tell right away that this sculpt is different from that sculpt. Not just in shape, but also in size, right? And they have these available for most of the major powers. I also got Churchills for the British. So I've also picked them up for the British as well. Easy enough to tell, right? Anyway. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and that's how you can take a standard game and add all sorts of different units to it on a budget. And then after you've done this, I highly recommend, if there's anything that you use all the time, you know, it's just like anything else, having a stack of counters, it's kind of annoying, so you can get yourself some sculpts like I'm starting to do here, and there you go. You're no longer looking at this, and it's easy, right? Like, you can tell right away that is not anything else. That is only a rocket artillery. Okay, so I'm going to shut it down here, and thanks for watching. Hopefully this was informative and helpful for you, and helps people get into this game without worrying about the financial stress if that happens to be something that's going on for you, because this is supposed to be a game and fun, not stressful. So see you later.